Well, last night's episode of the Knick was exciting, wasn't it? Now, I'm not one of those guys who needs action to be excited for a particular story, but this was really the first time in the entire history of the show, albeit brief history of the show, where the characters were actually in physical danger. I mean, up until this point, we've been establishing relationships, we've been developing the characters, we've been showing them saving other people's lives, but this was the first time in the show, as far as I can remember, where the characters were in actual serious danger of being harmed. Um, Now, the plot of this actually actually starts with some nameless agent of Collier trying to recruit this black woman off the street to be one of Collier's whores. Now, now the woman's husband gets into a fight with the guy, and the guy ends up getting stabbed and eventually dies in the hospital. Um, and apparently he was a popular guy because his death basically spurs most of, if not the entire town, to start hunting down and just beating mercilessly as many black people as they can find, in an attempt to find the guy who stabbed this again apparently popular guy. Um, and this actually leads to a riot and a subsequent break-in at the Knick. The crowd just demolishes the door and breaks into the Knick because the Knick is sheltering a bunch of black patients, and this eventually leads them to smuggle the black patients to another hospital that will take them, where they will be safer. And that basically forms the entire plot of the episode. And you kind of see where I'm coming from when I say that these characters were actually in physical danger this time, um, especially given the unsafe nature of the streets. Now, what really impressed me about this episode, aside from the main plot, which was the smuggling of the black patients past all of the racist city dwellers, what really impressed me about this episode is that basically every character got some form of advancement, and that's pretty hard to do in one episode, let alone one where there was as much going on as in this one. Um, I mean, usually it's only one or two characters that get advancement, but this one, basically all of them got their moment to shine, got their moment of advancement, and yeah, I was just really impressed because think about it. Thack, he actually, well, first of all, this was kind of continuing from the last episode where he was kind of strengthening his relationship with Dr. Edwards, and and kind of not even starting to see him as an equal, but continuing to see him as an equal, and to see him as a valued member of the Knick. I mean, he has made some valuable contributions to the Knickerbocker Hospital, and Thack realizes this, and as a result, Thack does basically everything in his power to protect Edwards and the other black patients, which is something that I don't really think he would have done at the beginning of the series. Um, and in addition, in addition to Thack actually going through that little advancement in the benevolence of his character, we also had Lucy, Nurse Elkins, actually starting to come into his world towards the end of the episode. Not just with the love scene spoiler, but also kind of getting a first-hand experience of these substances that he chooses to dabble in, because he takes some of those substances while he's making love to her, which, interesting strategy. But yeah, in addition to that, we had Dr. Edwards kind of really being challenged, in the sense that up until this point he's been able to solve most of his problems through sheer force of will. In this episode, he's forced to hide, which goes against his character. I mean, he is not a runner, he is not a hider. He likes to face his problems head on, and he can't do that in this episode because obviously he cannot fight the entire city. So he's forced to hide with the black patients. So again, he sort of has to trust his colleagues. And in addition to that, we even had Cleary getting his little moment because when the crowd steals the horses of the ambulance carriage, and they need the ambulance carriage, Cleary's like, all right, load them up in there, and Barrow's like, what for? There are no horses. And Cleary, the next shot, it shows Cleary pulling the carriage, with maybe one or two people pushing the carriage behind, but he's doing the brunt of the work. It's like that scene in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves where they force Friar Tuck to pull the caravan, and at the end he's like, "Thank you, Lord, for teaching me humility." It's kind of like that, except Cleary does it voluntarily. So that was a pretty cool moment of heroics on his part. Again, something that I don't necessarily think he would have done. He has, I think, gained in a very subtle way, I think he has gained some degree of respect for not only Sister Harriet, who also got a little moment of protecting the black patients in this one, but also for the Knickerbocker as a whole, because I believe in the beginning of the series he was just obsessed with bodies, but now it's advanced slightly more than that. So yeah, I really like this episode, and the way that the angry mob scenes are handled, it's typical Steven Soderbergh stuff where the music is not swelling. It's very simplistic. Maybe one or two notes. It does not do anything to eclipse the action. The musical score in this one is very Michael Mann-ish, or is very much in the style of the type of stuff that you would hear on a Michael Mann movie, or even or maybe John Carpenter, or, if I'm being pretty bold, a Brad Fiedel score. It's very simplistic, but again, that works because it helps convey the more visceral nature of the show. This is not meant to be a quote unquote cinematic show. It's supposed to present this time period as authentically as possible, with granted some pretty memorable cinematic characters, but even so, that Soderbergh is not, especially in recent years, Soderbergh is not one of those guys who goes for the overly theatrical. He presents things as they are, hence why he doesn't necessarily use a lot of music when his actors are just talking, because he just lets scenes play. And the fact that he was able to do that and to employ his style with this type of scenario, with this angry mob scenario, which could be very chaotic. I mean, he could have resorted to a bunch of shaky cam. He could have had some very chaotic music going around, and he didn't. I think that was really impressive. And to be able to pull this off in one episode, I think is even more impressive. So yeah, I really like this episode of The Knick. Like I said, every single character got their moment in the sun. The acting is still fantastic. I really like some of the heroics this time around. Even from minor characters, again, like Sister Harriet, who was holding up her cross and going on by the Lord's will you shall not harm these patients. True, she doesn't necessarily think herself fully worthy of the Lord, considering what she does in secret. But I'm not going to get into that. Let's say controversial topic. Yeah, The Knick. I can't believe it's almost over. I honestly can't believe it, because it just seems like it came and went. But maybe that's for the best. Maybe it really is, because if this was like 22 episodes, I don't really think they would have had. I know they wouldn't have had as much time to fully develop a lot of these plot lines and these characters, and to write them as intricately as they have done in 10 episodes. It's different. I mean, a 22 episode series or a 22 or 23 episode season is very different than a 10 to 13 episode season. Namely in the realm of filler. I don't really think this show has had any filler up to this point. So yeah, pretty eventful episode, both in terms of the episodic arc of the Angry Mob, which was very exciting, but also in terms of character advancement. So yeah, great episode of The Knick. great episode of a great show.